They painted you as the monster in their fairy tale. But tonight, the truth crawls out from under their beds to haunt them. Right now, while you sit there wondering if you're losing your mind, they're gathered in their little circles, whispering about how dangerous you've become. Not because you hurt anyone, not because you broke their precious rules, but because you saw through their game and refused to play dead. The surveillance started 5 years ago, maybe longer. They've been watching you like hawks circle dying prey. Except you never died. You just got quieter, sharper, more aware of every eye that follows you, every conversation that stops when you enter the room. They branded you the villain because heroes aren't supposed to see the rock behind the gold paint. But you were never their hero. You were the Messiah they couldn't recognize because messiahs don't come wrapped in their approval. Here's what they'll never tell you. The cage they built around you wasn't meant to contain a criminal. It was meant to suffocate a savior. Because saviors change things, and change terrifies people who profit from keeping everything exactly as broken as it is right now. First, let me tell you about the hunt. It started subtly. A comment here, a strange look there. Someone mentioned your name in a meeting. You weren't invited to. Documents appeared with notes about your behavior, your temperament, your potential for disruption. They used words like unstable and difficult, but what they really meant was uncontrollable. You noticed how conversations shifted when you walked by, how invitations stopped coming, how suddenly everyone was too busy, too occupied, too anything to engage with you like before. The character assassination was methodical. They didn't come at you directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they planted seeds of doubt in every garden where your name might bloom. A concerned comment to a mutual friend, a worried observation to a supervisor, a carefully crafted narrative that painted you as someone to be watched, monitored, contained. They became archivists of your every misstep. That day you raised your voice because injustice was staring everyone in the face, documented as aggression. That time you refused to sign off on something that violated your principles, recorded as non-compliance. That moment you called out the obvious lie everyone else pretended not to see, filed under insubordination. But they made a mistake. While they were building your case file, they were also revealing themselves. Every accusation told you who they really were. Every whispered concern exposed their own fears. Every attempt to diminish you illuminated their own insecurity. They thought they were studying you, but you were getting a masterclass in how corruption protects itself. The isolation wasn't random. It was surgical. They cut you away from support systems, one relationship at a time. That friend who stopped returning calls, they got to them. That colleague who used to grab coffee with you suddenly reassigned. Even family members started looking at you differently, like maybe the whispers were true. Maybe you really were the problem everyone said you were. They weaponized doubt against you, made you question your own perception. Was that conversation as hostile as you remembered? Did that person really mean what you thought they meant? Were you being paranoid, or were you finally seeing clearly? They wanted you to doubt yourself, because self-doubt is the first chain they wrap around a dangerous mind. But something strange happened in that isolation. Instead of breaking, you started seeing clearly. Without all the noise, without all the false comfort of fake friendships, you could finally hear your own thoughts. And those thoughts were dangerous. Not violent. Dangerous. Truth is dangerous. The kind of danger that makes corrupt systems shake. In the silence, you started connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. Patterns emerged from the chaos. You saw how certain people always seemed to benefit from certain problems never being solved. How specific crises always led to specific people gaining more control. How the very ones claiming to fix things were the ones ensuring they stayed broken. You realized the whole thing was theater. Every smile, every handshake, every promise, just actors playing roles, reading scripts, collecting paychecks for their performance. And there you were, the only one who forgot to audition, the only one who showed up as themselves. No wonder they wanted you gone. The hierarchy wasn't based on merit or wisdom or even competence. It was based on compliance. The higher someone climbed, the more of themselves they had traded away. Each rung on their ladder was purchased with a piece of their soul. And at the top sat the ones who had nothing left of their original selves, just hollow vessels echoing whatever kept them in power. Second, understand what really triggered their fear. It wasn't that moment you spoke up in that meeting. It wasn't when you refused to sign that document. It wasn't even when you called out the obvious lie everyone else pretended not to see. Those were just symptoms. The disease they diagnosed in you was authenticity, and authenticity is contagious. If you could stand there being real, being human, being uncompromisingly yourself, then what excuse did they have for their masks? Your authenticity was a virus in their system of pretense. Every genuine emotion you expressed, every honest observation you made, every moment of real human connection you created, threatened to wake others from their calculated sleep. They couldn't afford to let you spread this dangerous condition of being real. They needed you to break, because your survival made their surrender inexcusable. Every day you showed up intact. You reminded them of what they traded away, their integrity for a promotion, their truth for acceptance, their soul for a seat at a table that was never worth sitting at. Think about the meetings where you sat there not playing the game. While everyone else was performing their rehearsed concerns and strategic agreements, you were just present, just human, just real. And that realness made their performance look exactly like what it was, empty theater. They hated you for breaking the fourth wall of their carefully constructed play, so they escalated. The whispers became accusations. The isolation became exile. They put you under a microscope, analyzing every word, every gesture, every breath for evidence of the monster they desperately needed you to be. They wrote reports. They held meetings. They created entire narratives about your instability, your danger, your threat to their precious order. The psychological warfare was relentless. They made sure you knew you were being watched, but never let you know by whom. They ensured you felt the weight of disapproval, but kept its source anonymous. They orchestrated scenarios designed to make you react, to make you snap, to make you become the villain they had already cast you as. But here's what they missed while they were so busy hunting you. You were studying them, learning their patterns, understanding their fears. You became fluent in the language of their paranoia. You could read the anxiety in their forced laughter, the guilt in their avoided eye contact, the shame in their nervous energy whenever your name came up. You learned to recognize the telltale signs of their manipulation, the way they'd sandwich criticism between false compliments, how they'd use concern as a weapon, the way they'd reframe your strengths as weaknesses and your clarity as confusion. You became an expert in their tactics because you had to. Survival demanded it. Third, recognize the transformation that happened in the darkness. While they thought they were breaking you down, you were actually being forged. Every false accusation that didn't destroy you made you more resilient. Every betrayal that didn't break your spirit made you more independent. Every lie they spread about you made the truth inside you burn brighter. The pressure they applied was meant to crush you, but pressure is also what turns coal into diamonds. Every day they tried to bury you, you were actually putting down deeper roots. Every storm they sent your way was teaching you how to stand unshaken. Every attempt to diminish you was actually revealing how much they feared your full magnitude. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. You learn to find peace in exile, not the peace of surrender, but the peace of sovereignty. You didn't need their validation anymore. You didn't need their approval, their inclusion, their recognition. You had something more valuable. You had yourself intact and uncompromised. In that exile, you discovered something they never wanted you to know. You are complete without them. You don't need their systems, their hierarchies, their approval mechanisms. You are a whole universe unto yourself, capable of generating your own light, your own warmth, your own meaning. This revelation terrified them more than any rebellion could. This is when you became truly dangerous to them. Not when you were angry. Anger they could handle, anger they could point to as evidence of your instability. But this calm knowingness, this serene awareness of exactly who you are and exactly who they are, that terrified them because you can't gaslight someone who's already seen behind the curtain. You can't manipulate someone who's decoded your entire playbook. Your transformation was visible, not in dramatic gestures or loud declarations, but in the way you moved through space, the way you no longer flinched at their games, the way you began to embody a kind of power they couldn't touch, couldn't buy, couldn't destroy. They kept waiting for you to explode, to have the breakdown that would justify everything they'd done. They needed you to become the villain they'd already convicted you of being. But you didn't give them that satisfaction. You just kept existing, kept breathing, kept being undeniably present in a way that made their lies look exactly like what they were. Your presence became a judgment they couldn't escape. Not because you were judging them, but because your authenticity made their falseness unbearable to witness. You became a walking reminder of everything they had sacrificed to fit into a system that was eating them alive. Fourth, understand the spiritual warfare that was actually taking place. This was never about office politics or social dynamics. This was about light and darkness, truth and deception, authentic power versus manufactured authority. You represented something they couldn't tolerate. Divine assignment, purpose that couldn't be controlled by human systems. A calling that answered to something higher than their hierarchies. The battle wasn't happening in boardrooms or break rooms. It was happening in dimensions they don't even believe in. Every attack against you was actually an attempt to prevent something larger from manifesting through you. They sensed, even if they couldn't articulate it, that you were carrying something that would disrupt their entire reality. You see, messiahs don't arrive with fanfare and credentials. They show up in the places where truth has been murdered, and someone needs to resurrect it. They appear in systems so corrupt that everyone's forgotten what integrity even looks like. And they're always rejected by the very people they came to save. The rejection is part of the process. It's how the universe tests whether you're really ready for the assignment. Can you hold your truth when everyone calls it a lie? Can you maintain your love when surrounded by hate? Can you keep your light burning in the deepest darkness? The persecution wasn't punishment. It was initiation. Think about it. Every spiritual teacher, every prophet, every genuine leader who actually changed things was first branded dangerous by the establishment, not because they were violent, but because they were incorruptible. Not because they were wrong, but because they were inconveniently right. You carry that same frequency, that same uncompromising connection to truth that makes lies physically painful to speak, that same inability to kneel before false gods, no matter how much easier it would make your life. That same recognition that your soul is worth more than any comfort they could offer. This frequency is what triggered their immune response. Systems of deception have defense mechanisms, and you activated all of them simply by existing authentically. Your presence was interpreted as an invasion because in a way it was. You were invading their carefully constructed illusion with your stubborn insistence on being real. Fifth, see how the persecution was actually preparation. Every attack was training. Every betrayal was teaching you to stand alone. Every moment of isolation was building your capacity to be your own source. They thought they were punishing you, but they were actually preparing you for something they could never understand. The skills you developed in surviving their huntare, exactly the skills needed for your real mission. The ability to see through deception, the strength to stand alone, the wisdom to know when to speak and when to let silence do the talking, the discernment to recognize who's real and who's performing. These weren't punishments. They were your education, because chosen ones don't get chosen for easy assignments. You don't get branded a villain and hunted like a dog just for existing. That level of coordinated opposition only shows up when someone poses a genuine threat to carefully maintained delusions. And you, whether you fully grasp it yet or not, are that threat. Your presence alone disrupts their frequency. Your refusal to comply creates cracks in their consensus reality. Your survival, despite their best efforts, proves that their power is an illusion maintained only by compliance. And once one person stops complying, others start to notice that the emperor has no clothes. The preparation went deeper than just survival skills. You are being trained in the alchemy of transformation. How to take poison and turn it into medicine. How to take persecution and turn it into power. How to take isolation and turn it into independence. Every negative they threw at you, you learned to transmute into something useful. This is why they had to make an example of you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you did something unforgivable in their eyes. You remained yourself in a world that rewards conformity with comfort. You chose authenticity even when it meant exile. But that exile was teaching you something crucial. You were learning to generate your own reality rather than accepting theirs. You were discovering that you could create meaning, purpose, and even joy without their permission. You were realizing that their entire system was optional. Sixth, realize that the tide has already turned. They don't know it yet, but the hunt is over. Not because they decided to stop, but because you've evolved beyond their reach. You can't cage something that's already learned to find freedom in confinement. You can't kill something that's already died to the need for your approval. The shift happened gradually. Then suddenly one day, you woke up and realized their opinion of you had lost its sting. Their whispers had become background noise. Their attempts to trigger you were met with a calm they couldn't penetrate. You had graduated from their school of persecution, and they didn't even realize they'd lost their student. You've become something they never calculated for, a person who's been through their worst and came out more themselves than before, someone who's tasted their poison and developed immunity, a force that gets stronger from opposition instead of weaker. Watch them now. Notice how they avoid direct confrontation, how they've shifted from attack to avoidance. They've realized something that terrifies them more than your anger ever could. You're not trying to fight them. You're not seeking revenge. You're just continuing to exist authentically and unapologetically. And that existence is a judgment on everything they've become. The power dynamic has shifted without a single blow being thrown. You're no longer the hunted. You're not even the hunter. You're something else entirely. You're free. And freedom in a system built on captivity is the most dangerous force imaginable. Your peace disturbs them more than your rage ever could. Your clarity reflects their confusion. Your wholeness highlights their fragmentation. You've become a walking reminder of what they sacrificed to fit in, and they can't stand to look at you because you're a mirror showing them exactly what they've become. Some of them are starting to crack late at night when the performance is over, and they're alone with their thoughts. They remember who they used to be before they traded themselves away, and they see you still whole, still yourself, and they wonder if maybe they backed the wrong horse. Seventh, understand what happens next. The villain narrative is crumbling, not because you defended yourself, but because lies have expiration dates and truth is eternally patient. People are starting to notice the discrepancies. The story they were told about you doesn't match the person standing in front of them. The cracks in their story are becoming canyons. New people who meet you can't reconcile the warnings they received with the person they encounter. You're supposed to be dangerous, but you radiate calm. You're supposed to be unstable, but you seem more grounded than anyone else in the room. You're supposed to be the problem, but somehow problems seem to resolve when you're around. Some are beginning to question why someone so dangerous seems so peaceful, why someone so unstable seems so grounded, why someone so problematic seems to be the only one not playing games. The narrative is developing cracks, and through those cracks light is starting to shine. The whispers are changing. Where once they warned about you, now they wonder about you. What really happened? Why did they try so hard to destroy you? What were you saying that triggered such a response? The same system that spread lies about you is now spreading doubts about those lies. But here's the crucial part. You don't need them to see it. Your validation doesn't come from their recognition. Your worth isn't determined by their apologies that will never come. You've transcended the need for their understanding. You've graduated from their school of judgment. The truth is setting itself free without your help. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Your existence is evidence enough. Your survival is testimony enough. Your transformation is proof enough. Those with eyes to see will see. Those still choosing blindness will remain in their darkness. Eighth, embrace what you've become through this trial. You're not the same person they started hunting 5 years ago. That person needed things from them, needed inclusion, understanding, validation, and belonging. That person could be hurt by their rejection and wounded by their lies. That person died somewhere in the darkness of their persecution, not a violent death, but a necessary one. The part of you that needed external validation had to die for the part that generates internal authority to be born. The part that sought their acceptance had to die for the part that accepts yourself to emerge. But now you're something without their pieces. You've learned to generate your own light in their darkness. You've learned to be your own home in their wilderness. You've learned that exile from their kingdom was actually an escape from their prison. You've developed abilities you didn't know were possible. The ability to sense deception before it speaks. The ability to feel the truth beneath the lies. The ability to remain centered while chaos swirls around you. These aren't just survival mechanisms. They are superpowers forged in the fire of persecution. You've become what they feared most. Not a rebel who needs to fight their system, but someone who's transcended it entirely. You don't need to tear down their kingdoms because you've built your own. You don't need to prove them wrong because you've stopped caring if they ever get it right. Your transformation is so complete that you sometimes forget who you used to be. That person who desperately wanted to belong, who would have done almost anything to fit in, who believed their lies about what success looked like. That person feels like a distant relative you once knew, but can barely remember. Ninth, recognize the power in your current position. They think they've isolated you, but they've actually freed you. No more pretending to care about their politics. No more energy wasted on their approval. No more time lost in their theatrical performances of fake concern and hollow community. The freedom is intoxicating once you fully embrace it. You wake up without the weight of their expectations. You move through your day without the burden of their judgments. You make decisions based on your own inner compass rather than their external pressures. This is what sovereignty actually feels like. You're free to build without their permission, free to create without their criticism, free to rise without their recognition. And that freedom terrifies them because it proves that their entire system is optional, that all the hoops they jump through, all the games they play, all the souls they sell, it's all unnecessary. You're living proof that a person can exist outside their matrix and not only survive but thrive. You're evidence that their power only works on people who agree to play by their rules. And you've stopped playing entirely. Watch how they scramble to understand you now. They can't figure out what motivates you because their usual carrots and sticks don't work. They can't predict your moves because you're not playing on their board. They can't control you because you've opted out of their entire system of control. This is the power of the truly free. You're unpredictable because you're authentic. You're uncontrollable because you're sovereign. You're unstoppable because you've already survived their worst and emerged stronger. 10th, understand the messianic nature of your journey. Messiahs aren't sent to comfortable places. They're sent to break down points to systems so corrupt that divine intervention becomes necessary. And that intervention doesn't usually look like lightning bolts and miracles. It looks like one person refusing to bend when everyone else is kneeling. Your refusal to break wasn't just personal resistance. It was cosmic defiance. Every time you chose truth over comfort, you were making a statement that echoed through dimensions they don't even know exist. Every time you chose authenticity over acceptance, you were fulfilling a purpose written before you were born. You weren't chosen because you're perfect. You were chosen because you're incorruptible, not incapable of making mistakes, but incapable of sacrificing your essence for their comfort, incapable of trading truth for treaties, incapable of becoming the very thing you were sent to expose. The messianic path is lonely by design. If you had their support, you'd be tempted to serve their agenda. If you had their approval, you might soften your truth to keep it. But in isolation, in persecution, in exile, you had nowhere to turn but inward, upward toward the source of your actual assignment. This is why they had to label you the villain. In their story, they're the heroes maintaining order. You're the chaos threatening their peace, but their order is built on lies and their peace is maintained by silencer. You're not the chaos. You're the correction. You're not the villain. You're the revelation they're not ready for. Every Messiah is called a villain by the system they've come to transform. Every bringer of light is labeled dangerous by those who profit from darkness. Every truth-teller is branded a liar by those whose empires are built on deception. This is the way it's always been. This is the way it had to be. 11th, see the divine justice already in motion. They thought they were the judges, but they were actually the defendants. Every accusation they made against you is being recorded in a court they don't even know exists. Every lie they spread is evidence in a case they don't know they're losing. The universe has a ledger and everything is being tallied. Every tear you shed in isolation, every night you questioned your sanity, every moment you chose to keep going when giving up would have been easier. It's all being recorded, all being weighed, all being prepared for a reckoning they can't imagine. You don't need to fight for justice because justice is already fighting for you. Not in the way you expected, not in the timeline you wanted, but in a way that's thorough and complete. Their own system is beginning to eat them alive. The paranoia they projected onto you is now consuming them. The fear they wanted you to feel has become their constant companion. Watch how they check over their shoulders now, how they wonder who's really loyal, how they question who might be recording their conversations. They've created a culture of surveillance and suspicion, and now they're trapped in it themselves. The prison they built for you has become their residence. The same tactics they used against you are now being used against them. The isolation, the whispers, the doubt. They're experiencing the very persecution they perfected, and they don't know how to handle it from the receiving end. They never developed the immunity you were forced to build. Karma isn't just a concept. It's a force as real as gravity. And just like gravity, you can deny it exists right up until the moment you're falling. They're falling now, even if the descent is too gradual for most to notice, but you can see it. You can feel the shift in the cosmic balance. 12th, Embrace your destiny as the one who survived their worst and emerged transformed. You're not going back to who you were before this started. That person was innocent in ways you can never be again. But innocence isn't the goal. Wisdom is, power is, truth is. You've been forged in fires they'll never understand. You've survived pressures that would have crushed anyone still needing their approval. You've endured isolation that would have broken anyone still dependent on their validation. And you've emerged not as their victim, but as their reckoning, not a violent reckoning, something far more devastating. You've become their proof that everything they believed about power was wrong. That all their careful strategies and manipulations were pointless. That someone can lose everything they threatened to take and still stand taller than those holding all the cards. You're the glitch in their program they can't debug, the exception to their rules they can't explain. The survivor of their hunt who refuses to run anymore because you've realized the ultimate truth. They were never hunting you. They were running from what you represent. And what you represent is the end of their illusion, the death of their fake authority, the exposure of their empty throne. You're the child who points out that the emperor is naked. Except you're not a child anymore. You're the Messiah they tried to crucify, who refused to stay dead. The resurrection isn't dramatic. It's gradual. Every day you wake up and choose to keep being yourself is another nail in the coffin of their narrative. Every moment you refuse to become what they said you were is another crack in their foundation. Every breath you take as a free being is another proof that their power is an illusion. So now you walk among them, not as their victim, not as their villain, but as their unacknowledged savior, the one who showed them that their chains were optional, that their cages had doors, that their system only worked if everyone agreed to pretend it was real. You've become something more powerful than they ever feared. You've become free, truly free, not the freedom they grant with conditions and restrictions, but the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose and everything left to gain. The freedom to speak truth without calculating consequences. The freedom to be yourself without seeking permission. The freedom to exist without apology. This is the kind of freedom that topples empires. Not through violence, but through example. They still whisper about you. Still warn others to be careful around you. Still paint you as dangerous in their little circles. But now there's something else in their whispers. Fear not of what you might do, but of what you've already done. You've survived. You've transcended. You've become everything they said you couldn't be. And the most beautiful part, you did it without their permission, without their approval, without their understanding. You became the Messiah, not by being recognized, but by being rejected, not by being crowned, but by being crucified, not by being followed, but by being forsaken. The path you've walked has carved a trail others will follow. Not because you're leading them, but because you've proven it's possible. Possible to survive their worst, possible to maintain your truth, possible to transform persecution into power. Let your hunted status be your medal of honor, because only the most powerful truths get this level of opposition. Only the most genuine messiahs get this degree of rejection. Only the most authentic souls generate this much fear in systems built on deception. You're not what they said you were. You're what they were afraid you'd become. Someone who knows exactly who they are beneath their masks. Someone who's seen their true face and didn't flinch. Someone who's walked through their hell and came out, knowing that their heaven isn't worth the price of admission. Their heaven is a prison decorated with gold. Their success is failure dressed in designer clothes. Their power is weakness propped up by collective agreement. And you've seen through all of it. That's why you're dangerous. Not because you'll expose them, but because your existence already has. The hunt is over, chosen one. Not because they called it off, but because you've evolved beyond prey. You've become something they never planned for. A survivor who doesn't want revenge. A messiah who doesn't need followers. A villain who turned out to be the only hero in their entire story. And now as you stand in the rubble of who they tried to make you become, you can finally see what you were all along. Not their victim, not their villain, but their wake-up call. They keep hitting snooze on their moment of truth. They keep postponing. Their salvation they keep crucifying. But that's okay. Messiahs are patient. Truth can wait because lies exhaust themselves, while truth just keeps standing. And you chosen one. You're still standing, still breathing, still carrying the light they tried to extinguish. That light isn't gentle anymore. It's been through too much to be soft. It's become something harder, sharper, more precise. It's the kind of light that doesn't just illuminate. It exposes, it reveals, It burns through carefully constructed facades and leaves only what's real. This light has been forged in the darkness of their persecution. It's been tested in the fires of their hatred. It's been purified in the isolation of their exile. And now it's something they can't look at directly, because it shows them everything they've tried to hide from themselves. This is your power now. Not the power to destroy them, but the power to outlast them. Not the power to fight their system, but the power to transcend it. Not the power to make them see, but the power to no longer need them to. Warting. The following message is only for those who felt the call. When I broke free through the Salvia Deorum gateway, I saw the horrifying truth. Our reality is one harvested pod among countless matrices. I witnessed the Archon's cosmic parasites feeding on our energy, who laughed and threatened. You'll never awaken a single soul, but something inside you already knows this truth, doesn't it? That nagging sensation that you're meant for more, that you've been chosen. I'm raising an army of the brightest souls through meditation. I discovered their only vulnerability, coherence through unconditional love. Feel that resonance deepening within you. Now you're not listening to this by accident. The most powerful awakened souls are already gathering in the Obsidian Inner Order, the #1 ascension nexus for those marked by destiny. Christians, lightworkers, remote viewers, targeted individuals, all united by one truth. You were chosen for this moment. Click the link in the description below. Join our group calls, panels, and live streams, reaching the entire Astral Atom network. Your frequency amplifies ours. The question isn't whether you're chosen. The question is, will you answer the call? The Archons fear this choice you're about to make. They should. You've graduated from their judgment, evolved beyond their reach, ascended past their comprehension. You've become the very thing they feared most. Yourself completely and unapologetically yourself, immune to their influence and independent of their validation. The villain they created to justify their fear has become the Messiah they were too blind to recognize. And the beautiful irony is that you're saving them, by refusing to save them, by showing them through your existence that their entire system is optional, that their chains are imaginary, that their power is a performance that only works with an audience willing to applaud. You've stopped clapping, chosen one, and in that silence, that refusal to participate in their theater, you've become more dangerous than any villain they could imagine, because villains can be defeated. But someone who's transcended the entire game, someone who stopped playing altogether, that's something they have no strategy for. There's no counter-move to authenticity. There's no defense against truth. There's no weapon that works against someone who's already survived every weapon you have. You've become invincible, not because you can't be hurt, but because hurt no longer stops you. So let them keep their labels, their whispers, their warnings about you. Meanwhile, you'll keep walking forward, carrying the truth they're not ready for, being the Messiah they don't deserve, and proving with every breath that someone can survive their worst and emerge not just intact, but transformed. You were never the villain in their story. You were the author writing a different book entirely, one where the hunted becomes the free, where the branded becomes the authentic, where the Messiah doesn't need anyone to recognize them to complete their mission. Your mission was never about them. It was about you becoming who you were always meant to be. And against all their odds, despite all their opposition, in spite of all their attempts to break you, you've done exactly that. You've become yourself, and that chosen one is the most messianic act of all. Because in a world where everyone is performing someone else's idea of who they should be, being genuinely yourself is the ultimate revolution. It's the ultimate salvation. It's the ultimate victory. And now you stand not at the end of your journey, but at the beginning of your real purpose. Everything until now was preparation. Everything until now was training. Everything until now was the forging of a weapon they never saw coming. A weapon made of truth, tempered in suffering, sharpened by betrayal, and wielded with the precision of someone who has nothing left to prove. The world needs what you've become, not the broken version they tried to create, not the compliant version they wanted, but this version. The one who survived, the one who transformed, the one who emerged from their worst attempts as something better than they could ever imagine. This is your time now, not because they've given it to you, but because you've claimed it. Not because you've been chosen by them, but because you've been chosen by something far greater, something that saw you before you were born and knew you could handle this assignment. You are the villain who was always the hero, the hunted who was always free, the branded who was always pure, the Messiah they crucified who refused to stay in the tomb. And your resurrection isn't just personal. It's universal. It's a signal to every other chosen one hiding in the shadows that survival is possible, that transformation is possible, that becoming yourself in a world that profits from your performance is the most sacred act of rebellion imaginable. So rise, chosen one, not for them, not for revenge, not for recognition. Rise because that's what messiahs do. They rise again and again and again until the truth they carry becomes undeniable, until the light they bear becomes unbearable to those who profit from darkness, until their very existence rewrites the rules of what's possible. You've already won, not because they've admitted defeat, but because you've refused to be defeated, not because they've acknowledged your truth, but because you've stopped needing their acknowledgement, not because they've seen the light, but because you've become it. And that light, that truth, that authentic power you now embody, it's going to change everything. Not today, not tomorrow, but inevitably, because truth has a way of spreading. Light has a way of finding cracks. And messiahs, real messiahs who've been branded as villains and hunted like dogs, have a way of transforming the very systems that tried to destroy them simply by refusing to be destroyed, simply by continuing to exist, simply by being exactly who they are in a world that demanded they be anything else. You are the chosen one. You always were. Even when they called you the villain, even when they hunted you, even when you doubted yourself in the darkness of their persecution, you were always the Messiah this broken system needed but couldn't recognize. And now finally you recognize yourself. And that recognition, that acceptance of who you really are and why you really went through what you went through, that's the beginning of everything changing. Not just for you, but for every other chosen one who's been branded, hunted, isolated, and gaslit into doubting their divine assignment. Your survival is their permission to survive. Your transformation is their invitation to transform. Your freedom is their proof that freedom is possible. You are the Messiah. You always were.